Heat, dust, screaming. The sun beats down on iron and flesh. Men in scale armor gasp for air that tastes of dirt and blood. Horses scream. Arrows fall like rain, impossible to see, impossible to block. A Roman soldier stumbles backward, sword still in his hand, his eyes wide with something his training never prepared him for. Terror. Not the fear of battle, but the certainty of annihilation. The line bends, then breaks. Thousands of voices rise. Not in the ordered shouts of the legions, but in the chaotic howl of men who know they are about to die. And somewhere in that suffocating press of bodies, an emperor falls. This is not a border skirmish. This is not a setback. This is the beginning of the end. On the plains outside Adrianople, in the Roman province of Thrace, the Eastern Roman Empire is about to lose its army, its emperor, and its illusion of invincibility. The date is August 9th, 378 AD. The battle will be remembered as one of the worst military disasters in Roman history, a defeat so complete that contemporaries compared it to Cannae, where Hannibal annihilated 80,000 Romans 6 centuries before. But this disaster did not begin here. It began 2 years earlier, on the banks of the Danube, with a decision made in good faith and executed with astonishing cruelty. In the summer of 376 AD, the Danube River carried more than water. It carried a people in flight. The Goths, hundreds of thousands of men, women and children, fled before an enemy they could not comprehend. The Huns had erupted from the eastern steppes, and the Gothic world was collapsing. The Thervingi under their chieftain Fritigern came to the Roman frontier with a simple plea. Let us cross. Let us settle. Let us become Romans. Emperor Valens saw opportunity. More farmers, more soldiers, more taxpayers. He granted permission. And for one brief moment, it seemed a triumph of Roman statecraft. Then the crossing began. The Danube is a mile wide at Durostorum. Roman officials, tasked with ferrying the refugees, saw not souls but profit. They accepted bribes to let armed warriors cross. They packed families onto leaky boats until vessels sank. And when the Goths, tens of thousands of them, finally reached the southern bank, they found not the promised land, but a holding pen. No grain, no land, no dignity. The Roman commanders Lupicinus and Maximus had a solution. Sell your children for dog meat. Gothic children, sold into slavery, bartered for the scraps of the Roman garrison. This was not a policy born of necessity. It was theft, it was greed, and it lit a fire that would consume an empire. When Fritigern protested, the Romans invited him to dinner. While he ate, they tried to kill him. He escaped, and the Gothic rebellion began. For 2 years the war ground on. The Goths, joined by Greuthungi cavalry and Alan horsemen, plundered Thrace. Roman armies marched out to destroy them, and failed. At the Battle of the Willows in 377 AD, both sides staggered away, exhausted. But Valens saw a chance. From his eastern command in Antioch, he heard reports of Gothic strength, perhaps 10,000 warriors. A manageable number, a victory within reach. He did not know that 10,000 more Gothic cavalry, Greuthungi and Alans, were foraging beyond the Roman scouts. He did not know that Fritigern, the shepherd-turned-general, was building a trap. And there is a myth that needs dispelling, that the late Roman army was a hollow shell, a shadow of the legions of Augustus or Trajan. This is not true. The army Valens commanded was professional, battle-hardened, and equipped with the finest weapons the empire could produce. Veterans of the Persian frontier, men who had fought in the desert, in the mountains, in the forests of the Rhine. The problem was not the army. The problem was the man who led it. By August 378 AD, Valens was impatient. His nephew Gratian, emperor of the West, was marching east with reinforcements. But Gratian had paused to crush Alemanni tribes along the Rhine, victories that only deepened Valens' envy. He wanted his own triumph. He wanted the glory. On the morning of August 9th, his scouts reported Gothic positions 8 miles from Adrianople. Valens gave the order. The army marched. Think of those soldiers. They had left their baggage train behind, their water, their food, their rest, all sacrificed for speed. They marched through the Thracian summer under armor that absorbed the sun's heat like a furnace. Their throats were dry, their legs ached. And when they reached the Gothic position, just after noon, they saw this. A wagon lager, a circle of carts and oxen, the women and children huddled inside. And on the ridge above, the Gothic infantry, waiting. The Romans formed for battle, cavalry on the wings, heavy infantry in the center, and for a moment, it seemed the old Roman machine was about to grind its enemies into dust. But nothing happened. Fritigern knew what Valens did not, that the cavalry he had sent to forage was returning. He needed time, so he sent emissaries to negotiate. More emissaries, more delays, and the Roman army stood in the August heat, watching the Goths light fires around their wagon circle, filling the plain with smoke and dust. Then, without orders, the Roman left wing attacked. They surged forward, these Roman cavalrymen, driving the Gothic infantry back toward the wagons. It looked like victory. It felt like victory. And then they heard the thunder. From the hills to the east came the Gothic cavalry, 10,000 horsemen returning from their forage, Grotungi and Alans, fresh, rested, and ready. They struck the Roman left flank like a hammer. The Roman cavalry broke. Not retreated. Broke. Men who had ridden forward with such confidence now fled in blind panic, trampling their own infantry as they rode. And the Gothic infantry, driven back to the wagons, turned. Ammianus Marcellinus, the Roman historian who recorded this battle, describes what happened next with the cold precision of a survivor. The foot soldiers stood unprotected, and their companies were so crowded together that hardly anyone could pull out his sword or draw back his arm. Because of clouds of dust, the heavens could no longer be seen and echoed with frightful cries. Arrows whirling death from every side always found their mark. The Roman army was no longer a fighting force. It was a slaughter. Men died in the press, crushed, suffocated, stabbed, shot. They could not form ranks. They could not retreat. They could not even raise their shields. The Goths, howling their battle cries, poured down from the ridge and through the gaps in the Roman lines. Emperor Valens fought with his remaining guards. When his bodyguards fell, he fled to a farmhouse with a handful of survivors. The Goths, not knowing who was inside, set it ablaze. Valens burned to death. His body was never found. 2/3 of the Eastern Roman army lay dead on the plain of Adrianople. 35 tribunes, generals of the highest rank, the flower of Roman military leadership. When word reached Constantinople, the city trembled. The Goths were at the gates. Fritigern had won. But Fritigern made a mistake. He knew how to fight in the open field, but not how to take a walled city. Constantinople held, and in the chaos that followed, a new emperor emerged, Theodosius, who would make a peace that changed the world. The Goths were not destroyed. They could not be destroyed. So Theodosius did something unthinkable. He settled them inside the empire as a self-governing people, bound by treaties, not by conquest. The Roman army would never be the same. The old system, the separation between Roman soldier and barbarian outsider, collapsed. Within a generation, the army that defended the empire would be an army of Goths, Vandals, and Franks, commanded by Roman generals who were often barbarians themselves. Adrianople was not the end of Rome. The Eastern Empire would survive for another 1,000 years, but it was a hinge point, a moment when the world pivoted. Before Adrianople, Rome absorbed outsiders, melted them down, and made them Roman. After Adrianople, the outsiders came in such numbers with such power that Rome could no longer reshape them. They reshaped Rome. The Western Empire would fall in 476 AD, less than 100 years later. But did it fall because of Adrianople? Or did Adrianople simply reveal what was already true? That an empire built on conquest could not forever resist the very forces it once used to expand. Was this the moment Rome began to fall, or the moment it failed to adapt?